All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome to the August 30th, 2023 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye. Here, sorry.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca, Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the preceding meeting from August 9th, 2023. Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have a resolution for childhood cancer
Oh.
awareness month.
That is me.
Yep.
Apologize. Here we go. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-284, 2023. Whereas childhood cancer continues to take a horrible toll on our community and the country at large, and continues to be the leading cause of death for children, with the yearly average of about 10,500 children under age 15 being diagnosed with cancer across the country, including 48 local children in 2022. And whereas major advances in treatment have seen that 85% of the children with cancer now survive 5 years and more, which is a significant increase since the 1970s when the 5-year survival rate was about 58%. But even with those advances, it still means that tragically 1 child in 6 will not survive their cancer, including 10 sweet souls in our community who lost their battle, and 1 child dying is 1 too many. And whereas the town wishes to support efforts by Cure, Childhood Cancer Association, and others to bring awareness to this dreaded affliction, to let parents and children facing this disease know that they are not alone, and to encourage research and funding to help fight this disease. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board declares September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Henrietta, in the hopes of helping parents and children facing this disease find some comfort from and with others who are facing the same challenges, and to call for increased funding and research towards ending or at least reducing the death toll from this dreaded affliction. Be it further resolved that the Henrietta Town Board will be adding gold ribbons and awareness messages to their digital signage at town facilities, and encourages anyone able to do so to change their exterior lights to gold during the month, or at least during the week of September 17th through September 24th, as part of the Go Gold to show support for the children battling cancer.
Second.
Obviously it's something that no parent or child would ever want to go through. Anything we can do to help show support for those who are battling it, we are more than happy to do. Wish we could do more. Really have much more to say than that.
Our hearts go out to these children. I've had people at my church who have gone through this. I've known people that have gone through this. I just can't imagine as a parent and a grandparent having a child fighting this. And I think this is a great thing to do, just so people know that, we're here for them. So.
And we have some folks from, is it from Cure? Among other places that are going to accept the resolution. So what we'll do, we'll first call the roll, and then we'll present you with the certificate. Any further discussions, anything anyone would like to add from the audience? Including either of you. Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Yeah, in the corner here. We just signed it. Yeah, let's try that again.
One more.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'll let her know that, so. I will note that unfortunately, one of our town board members was unable to make it tonight due to health reasons. If you'd have liked the fifth signature. So I was saying that unfortunately, one of our town board members is unable to sign tonight. So if you want to, if you'd like the fifth signature, I'll email you when he's available, and we'll see if we could arrange some time for it. Perfect. Yep. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Our first public hearing tonight is for special use permit application number 2023-032 Central Bark of Rochester. I don't know how you pronounce it, Katamari Properties LLC, 65 Saginaw Drive, to repurpose an existing 6,900 square foot building to be a doggy daycare, grooming, and boarding facility with the sale of dog-related products. Do we have representatives coming up? Introduce yourselves, your relationship to the project, and then tell us about the project.
My name is Phil Clark, Senior. And
Phil Clark Jr. My father and I are going to business together, hopefully, to open up a doggy daycare facility here in Henrietta. Very excited about it. Love dogs. My dad and I always had a passion together, going to business together. Looking forward to giving back to the community. Yeah.
in addition, we will be the tenants. Chris is the building owner. Happy to answer. We've met with several of your town officials. The fire marshal had some questions. I think we've addressed his question. Your town engineer had some questions on parking. I think we've addressed his. I think we've addressed the question, so we're happy to answer any more questions.
Sure. Like I'll say, certainly for myself, happy to have another doggy daycare facility in Henrietta. There has been some question as to whether that is the best building for it. For a couple reasons, one having to do with its prior use for industrial products, potential issues in terms of if there were any residues either in the floor or in the soil, stuff like that. And the town has received numerous comments from neighbors with regards to, the potential disruption due to barking and other issues with the large number of dogs. So just if you could address just a couple of those concerns. And
let me start with parking. We will have painted on the driveway, I believe, a total of 18 spots. Your town engineer said we had to demonstrate the need for 35, which we've demonstrated. However, experience, this is a franchise, experience with similar facilities, similar size. And we provide this to the,
I'm sorry, I didn't say, I said barking, not parking.
oh, barking.
Yep, it's okay. I did the same thing. I was like, Central Bank of Rochester, that's a hidden way for a bank to
All
go.
right,
And
so-
someone said it's
So-
bark.
so- Sorry about
problem.
the, we have visited the existing facilities in the area, a number of the franchise facilities. The dogs don't arrive all at once. They arrive in about an hour, hour and a half period in the morning, picked up at night. The dogs are not normally that noisy unless you're inside and you're kind of agitating them. The dogs will be in the rear part of the building. The front building is roughly 7,000 square feet. The front 1,000 is for reception, kind of dog treats, retail. All the dogs will be in the back. There's a insulated wall between those two areas. While I mean, I can't say dogs won't bark, but
I would say too, part of the plan is put some sound insulation around the building, and drop off for the dogs is typically between 7 and 9 a.m. And the pickup for the dogs is typically between 4 and 6:30 p.m. So, during the day, most of the dogs will be kind of in the backyard or in the building. But when people are typically at home and not working, the dogs will be in the facility or, ready for pickup. And therefore, with the insulation that we are in the capital improvements we're putting into the building, we do not expect it will be very loud for any residential areas. And for,
there's no residential areas,
Sure.
but it's an industrial area.
There is actually an residential area just to the south, but even so, some of the complaints have come. Complaints is the wrong word. Some of the concerns raised are from some of the other industrial
Okay.
neighbors as well. You said it was a franchise. Is there another one of these somewhere in Monroe County by any chance?
No,
no, we
Okay.
would be the first franchisee in Monroe County. It's based out of Wisconsin.
Gotcha.
If I may, a number of people expressed concern over the number, 100 dogs. Is there an intent to have 100 dogs on site on a daily basis, or is that like throughout the course of the week, you may be providing services to 100 dogs?
Yeah, so the absolute maximum capacity would be 100 dogs in any given day, but what we really like for the total enrichment of the dog is that it's a rotation process. So at any given time, the most dogs that will be kind of out on the floor per se would be 36 dogs, because we're constantly rotating them. And then we're also offering what's called a stay in place service for dogs who are not in daycare. And that is specific for dogs who do not want to do daycare. But they only want to, like if people are going out of town for holidays, they need boarding for their dog. So at any given time, where a dog would be what I call out in the open, either in the back or in the building playing and not in an insulated area, at most, there's going to be 36 dogs. So the noise factor at most, the loudest it would be at any given time would be 36 dogs. In my analysis of how many dogs might be there at any given time, I expect the capacity will be probably closer to 65%. So that being said, I would think at most, it'll probably be about 25 dogs at any given time.
And do you have an idea of comparison? There's a couple of doggy daycares here in Henrietta already. Do you have an idea as to what their capacity is or anything?
Yep.
the canine, the one on Calkins,
Yeah.
that's much larger than ours.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact number, maybe you do. And the other one, Camp Bow Wow is a little bit smaller, which is on Mushroom Boulevard. They're both in, and we've been by, clearly they're competitors. There's quite a demand for dogs. We don't view it as us or them. There's,
Right.
Right.
but we've been by them and I mean, as far as noise during the day or I understand the question. I just haven't seen any evidence to really support it. And when we toured a number of facilities out in the Milwaukee area, which was part of the franchise process, you know, if you went inside, you could agitate the dogs, and inside it may get kind of loud, but outside it was, you know, I wouldn't say you didn't hear, but it was not a noise or a nuisance to the neighbors. And there was a lot, it was areas similar to what we're looking at here. I can address when we're done with this, the some of the concerns about the flooring you mentioned.
Sure.
I'll hold off until you're.
And Steve, this might be supervisors, this might be a question better directed to you, but I was unclear from some of the comments whether there's any people that are in residence, like living on Saginaw. Are there any
No,
residential? homes on-
there's no residents on Saginaw, but Saginaw backs up to Castle Road. So the nearest residents are on Castle Road, but it's not, because it's on the northern side of Saginaw, it's not as much of an impact on the residents. There's another essentially building in between, but
Right.
as you mentioned, there could be stuff done from whether it's landscape or other stuff to potentially help keep any noise that does escape the building into the facility. So in terms of, I assume there are outdoor runs, or there'd be a fenced in outdoor yard?
Yes, they are, but as you said, they are on the north side,
Right.
so even that much, so two buildings between.
But, and I guess from a practice standpoint, if there was a perpetually barking dog out there, would the practice be to bring that dog inside?
Yeah, part of the safety protocols for dogs, and I literally just went through a lot of this training. What we call is excessive barking means that the dog is overstimulated. And what you want to do is to ensure that the dog is not overstimulated, because it could be unsafe for other dogs. So the protocol for that is to give what's called a rest period and take them out of rotation and put them in the nap room. So if a dog is ever barking too much, it becomes unsafe for other dogs, and we immediately put it into the nap area for essentially a cool down period.
You might want to comment on the daycare dogs and the stay and play in the interview process, which
Yep.
he's the dog guy.
Yeah,
I'm
so
the construction manager.
as part of doggy daycare process, it's a huge socialization for the dogs. It's to enrich their lives, for them and their owners as well. So we have a very detailed what we call behavior assessment process. And if it is deemed that what's called a red dog, which is not necessarily as social as others, and in those situations can bark more than others, those types of dogs probably would not be accepted into daycare until the owner took further measures, either with their veterinarian or other further trainings to correct those behaviors. So again, back to barking, because of the behavior assessment, I don't expect we would have excessive barking, and protocol demands that if there is excessive barking, it's unsafe for the other dogs. We put them away for a rest time.
Or kick them out of the program. The boarding dogs, the overnight dogs that are just boarding, they don't go through the same interview process. And I know it may sound odd, interview, and he's the interviewer, not me. But they do. And with the demand, it allows the operator of a facility to be fairly selective. So the demand for dogs.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Could you do me a favor and come up to the microphone so it gets recorded for the minutes?
The north side of the property is very heavily wooded too, and almost all the adjacent properties to the north side and really to the east, except for adjacent directly to the building and to the west, are surrounded by trees for the most part. So, from that sort of back point, like you can sort of see there's somewhat of a forest behind there.
Gotcha. And could you introduce yourself for the record?
My name's Chris Cieslak.
Thank you.
He's the owner of the building.
Yeah.
And the external dog play area is supposed to be on the north end? Is that the
Yes.
plan?
So how the building is situated is it faces south towards Saginaw on the loop.
Mhm.
So the north side of the property is essentially what I call the backyard.
Mhm.
And the outdoor play area for the dogs is in the north area backyard. And as Chris mentioned, it is surrounded by trees as well, backing up to essentially Jefferson.
Let me just add that on our original application, we looked at 5,400 square feet of area. Now we're only looking at, I sent a supplemental letter of regarding another area item, but we're only looking at 2,250 square feet, and it will be enclosed with a 6 or 8
8-foot fence.
eight foot fence. So also the ability, one of our concerns obviously, is we don't have a dog here and it gets loose and we have to go chase it so it's a confined area and also has natural turf that it won't be just on the existing soil. We'll remove 8 inches.
Of the 25 to 36 dogs that might be outside on a rotation, is that area cleaned on a daily basis?
100%. Part of the protocols for the franchisor, part of the reason why I picked this franchisor is we pride ourselves on being the safest franchise, one of them in the country. So protocol demands that anytime a dog defecates or urinates, that it has to immediately be picked up and also cleaned with the correct solution. And furthermore, at the end of every day, it has to be completely hosed down as well. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Also, just like to say, I mean, I think if we were to put a heavy industrial user into the property as well, the noise could be pretty significant as well. So like, I don't think from a noise perspective, the use is any different than what a prospective industrial tenant would be bringing to the property.
That one of the exceptions to that would be with regards to evenings for the dogs being boarded. I don't know if but I assume they have to be out at some point potentially for.
Yeah, so the hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So any dog that needs to relieve themselves would be in that window, and the vast majority of the business at this will be for doggy daycare. And again, the typical drop-off areas or drop-off times are from 7 a.m. to say 8 a.m. And the first step in that process is to put the dog into what we call the nap room until all the dogs are ready to go into a play area, which will be typically around 8 or 8:30. And then at the end of the day, the dogs to be ready for pickup to make it again as safe as possible. So we're not just kind of running dogs all over the place. The dogs need to go into the nap area by 4 o'clock. And that's so the owners can pick them up typically when they're done with work between 5 and 6. So again, the amount of time that the dogs will be outside, not during regular business hours, will be few and far between. It'll mostly be for dogs going to the bathroom, and that the process for that is to have staff take about a couple at a time. And all of these going to the bathrooms should be done by 7:30 at night. So under no situations would dogs be out at 2 o'clock in the morning or anything like that.
There's also indoor play areas. I mean, all the play areas are not outdoors, but there's
Gotcha.
roughly 3,000 square foot of indoor play areas, 3,000 square foot of crates, and then 1,000 square foot in the front for a grooming area. I mean, those are not precise numbers, but that's roughly the allocation of the space.
Great.
So if you have dogs that are being boarded, you obviously you're going to have somebody there watching them. Is there going to be somebody there 24/7, or is it going to be cameras that you can watch them, or how are you monitoring the dogs that are boarded, and how are you handling them on Sundays?
Yep. So yes, there will be video surveillance. That's one of the requirements of the franchise. So of course, an alarm system, and of course, video surveillance at all times. There will be staff there from 6 a.m. to say 7:30 p.m. constantly. And then for Sunday pickups, those are by appointment, but at a minimum, even if nobody's picking up, there is a 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift, as well as I think a midday shift as well to let the dogs out, as well as a PM shift from 3:30 to 6:30. So it's typically depending on the quantity of dogs at the facility, you will have 3 different shifts of people coming in. And frankly, in the beginning is hopefully the owner operator. That'll most likely be me. But yes, there are shifts throughout the day on Sundays and on holidays to ensure that the dogs have the ability to be fed and get their medication and go to the bathroom and all of those good things.
I just quick question, because I didn't see it when I was earlier looking through the packet, and I just double checked now. Do you have a site plan and a floor plan
Not with
in the packet? Okay,
I think
Yeah.
the site plan was on the screen for a second.
I think that was just Google Maps, but
Well, are you asking a site plan for the facility or internal or external?
that's not a site plan. I just want to see like, where is the yard gonna be? Where is the
Yeah.
And then, you know, like you talked about playrooms, that type of stuff.
Yes, we have that. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I saw that because
Oh, yes.
does that actually have
Can you see this if I go over and?
I can't see. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, here, wait a minute.
There's a,
This is the existing building.
yep,
This is the 2250 of enclosed outdoor play areas with artificial turf. This is the existing parking lot. This area actually around like that. So the permanent parking. I do not have with me, floor plan internally. I can come back with it.
if emailing it would be fine, if you want to just email it to townboard@henrietta.org. It doesn't, you know, just even like I said, something that has, it doesn't have to be a full, something that basically is showing where the different stuff is. That'd be
If
great.
you want, I can forward it.
I'll be blunt. I can't speak for the others, but we got a whole lot of responses. And we're gonna need to go through those to see if there are anything we have to address from a seeker standpoint. So I for one am not comfortable making a decision this meeting. We're gonna try to get all the input and then put that together and draft a response for the next meeting. I realize a lot of people like to get in and out in one meeting, but that's not always possible if there's a lot of concerns raised. That's part of our job here is to make sure, you know, if there are concerns. So again, as they've been coming in, we've been getting them to you. You've already addressed some of them with regards to the fire marshal and our dog control officer and stuff like that. But like I said, a lot of stuff came in today as well. So, and we haven't even opened it up to the floor. I don't know how many of these people, if any of these people here are ready to speak on stuff. So it's not a big deal if, in other words, I don't need it now. And if I had it now, I wouldn't be able to make a decision now because I'd like some time to think that over and put together a proper seeker response. So, okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so then what I'm going to ask you guys to do, if you want to sit at this,
I think the other question you just asked about the environmental stuff.
oh, okay, he addressed it quickly, but go ahead, if you could address that
Just to-
more.
So the former tenant in the building was Rochester Industrial Supply. They primarily were a wholesaler of products, of paper products like filters, hoses, and then like machinery like paint sprayer machines and, you know, the tools that go with those, compressor parts, that sort of stuff. They weren't a chemical supplier really for the most part. We also did a full environmental phase 2 when we bought it. We drilled the soil, had clean, you know, everything came back clean. Labella did all that testing for us and we have a full, it's a 200-page report saying the property is good.
Okay. So again, that goes back into one of those things that I saw the report there. I was able to skim it, but before I can put together a full seeker response, I'm going to need to dig into that deeper. Because again, that issue was raised by a number of, so again, the way the special use process and seeker process works is that we gather feedback both from ourselves and from residents, neighbors, whatever. And then if there are any potential adverse impacts identified, if we agree that they are a potential adverse impact, we then ask you to mitigate them. So for instance, you know, you were talking about where the dog yard is, you're going to be putting down artificial turf. So if there was anything sitting out, leaching into the soil, that wouldn't be a concern because you'd be mitigating it through. So the idea is then what happens is in our seeker report, we basically say, here was the concern, here is how it was mitigated. Now, like I said, for some things like, give you an example, right? Shake Shack going into the old Denny's was a restaurant. It's going to be a restaurant. There's not a whole lot of change. Those you can typically do the same night because there isn't much change. Although again, if somebody shows up and says, hey, and I'll use another example, Chick-fil-A, it's a restaurant going into a location where there was a restaurant. But obviously the traffic for Chick-fil-A, especially during opening, was very different than the restaurant it was replacing. So that was an example of, that one was a quite prolonged process. I'm not saying this one's going to be that, but that's essentially our job. And if you successfully mitigate everything, then the application gets approved. If you're not able to mitigate everything, then typically the application gets denied. So that's how it works.
I'm reasonably familiar with what you're saying.
Yep.
I just want to make one other comment on, I started on parking. I know that wasn't what you asked, but in the context of quote impacts, the study was done at the other facilities out in Wisconsin.
Yep.
3, there's more than 3, but the average number of cars arriving and cars leaving in the drop-off times that Philip talked about is 4.
Right.
So it's not like you got 100 dogs or 80, whatever.
Right.
And you got a whole slew of cars.
Sure.
Number of cars are pretty modest.
To my knowledge, no one's raised that issue, and I will say Saginaw Drive can certainly handle traffic. You get to the main post office facility through Saginaw Drive, and so it can certainly handle the traffic. In terms of parking, there's if code calls for one number and your experience shows another, you have 2 choices. You can either do what's called land banked parking, which basically says, okay, we're going to not put anything in this area so that if we ever need to put additional parking, we can put it here. Or your other option is to go to a variance. And a lot of times, again, if it's a franchise and you've got other examples, you can bring in those examples and then they can grant you a variance. But that's typically not an issue for this because, again, it can be easily mitigated.
And I have provided the information to your town engineer, which you seem to be satisfied with, that there was enough there for land banking. So
perfect. Okay. Anything else?
Just the total outside exercise area is going to be AstroTurf, right?
yes.
Canine turf,
Canine
yes.
turf, yeah. It's okay. There shouldn't be any issues with any smell then.
Yes, correct. And with the cleaning protocols, there should not either.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board before we open up the public? So what I'm going to ask you to do is move to this table here. There's a microphone there. That way, if we need to ask you to respond to something, you can. But then we'll just open it up. Is there anybody here who would like to talk on the subject? Just raise their hand. Coming up. You just have to introduce yourself and then provide your.
So good evening. My name's Allison Bartlett. I'm an attorney at Harder Seacrest and Emery. I'm here to speak tonight as counsel on behalf of 71 to 75 Saginaw Drive LLC, which owns the property immediately adjacent to 65 Saginaw Drive. I did submit a letter to this board for consideration earlier today, so I'm not going to sit here and read it off to all of you. Instead, I'm just going to highlight a few points raised therein. And so first and foremost, I would like to point out that our client is not opposed to the general doggy daycare and boarding business proposed at 65 Saginaw Drive. However, they wanted to come to this meeting tonight to raise relevant concerns surrounding potential impacts, most significantly noise, which I do understand that the applicant did provide some more detail tonight, which is helpful for the board's consideration to ensure that proper conditions to mitigate impacts to nearby properties are attached to any approval for this project. The proposal contemplates having play areas for up to 80 to 100 dogs and space for 30 to 40 kennels. Having just heard what the applicant said, it sounds like that is not likely going to be what the actual occupancy is, and it's more around 36. But nonetheless, this large number of dogs on the property will inevitably result in increased noise levels. It is helpful to hear that the applicant plans to place sound insulation within the building. However, the application itself does not contain any information about projected noise levels and similarly doesn't mention any noise mitigating measures specifically or designs. While the applicable zoning allows a variety of commercial uses within the area, the town code expressly prohibits uses of land which may be offensive due to production of noise, odor, or similar conditions. And given the express prohibition on uses which may be offensive as a result of noise and odor, coupled with the high likelihood of significant noise increases resulting from this amount of dogs on the property, The board should require a noise study or other sufficient data to assess noise on impacts from the project. And further information regarding noise is also important to ensure that the project wouldn't result in a continuing violation of the town's noise ordinance in Chapter 168. In evaluating the application tonight, I point the board's attention to Town Code Section 295-54 and specifically factors A, D, E, F, and G therein. For the reasons stated more fully in my letter submitted today, the board is empowered to and should issue appropriate conditions to any approval to minimize potential impacts which relate to these factors. So in considering a special use permit, subsection D of that section I just mentioned requires the board to analyze whether the proposed use will be a nuisance due to it being materially offensive by its production of noise. And similarly, subsection F requires the board to assess whether the proposed use would create material adverse impacts that can't be adequately mitigated, such as the areas required to be reviewed pursuant to seeker. Among the several impacts evaluated under seeker, as you know, is noise. And having multiple dogs on a 1 acre property will inevitably result in barking and increased noise levels. So as a result, we do think it's appropriate for the board to further evaluate these impacts and issue appropriate mitigating conditions to minimize those impacts as part of any approval. One such condition could be to incorporate the sound insulation that the applicant mentioned earlier tonight. Town Code Sections 295-54A and G require the board to analyze whether the use is consistent in character with those allowed and built in the neighborhood, and whether the physical conditions and characteristics of the site are suitable for the use, including looking at site size, location, vegetation, and topography. We hope the board considers issuing suitable conditions to any approval to properly screen potential impacts from neighboring properties, which may include adding earth berms, proper grading, particularly from the outdoor play area to prevent stormwater runoff, requiring loading doors to remain closed to minimize noise coming from the interior space, and implementing appropriate sound dampening material, other sound reducing designs into the project. Finally, if the facility will accommodate up to 100 dogs, then it's reasonable that there could be an influx of close to 100 cars in the peak morning and evening hours. We do know that the applicant did provide data showing that for other Central Park locations, there was never more than 4 cars during a 5-minute interval. And so we're just wondering if there were any measures that these other projects implemented to make sure that these cars were spread out over that period of time, or if there would be designated drop-off pickup times just to spread out that flow. For these reasons, on behalf of 71 to 75 Saginaw, we respectfully request that the board hold open the public hearing and table the application until at least its next regular meeting. Require the applicant to submit supplemental information so the board can properly address potential impacts, particularly noise, given the accommodation of so many dogs at the property, and then also issue any appropriate conditions to minimize impacts to nearby properties as part of any approval. So we do thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Coming up? No, I'm sorry. This gentleman raised his hand first. The dark shirt.
Hello, my name is Greg Wilforth, and my wife and I own the business at 75 Saginaw Drive, Oil Filter Service. Our family has been in business at this location since the mid-60s. We're perhaps the longest running business on Saginaw Drive. We are concerned about the potential negative impact the proposed business may have on our business. We are concerned with the volume of dogs that will be next door and how that noise will impact our business. Although it is an industrial area with a variety of issues, the area is actually very quiet. Weather permitting, well, in the summer, we have to keep our back and overhead doors open to keep the building cool. Constant barking throughout business hours would prevent me from operating my business and comfortably. When we drive by a dog boarding facility near Mendon Ponds, it has no adjacent neighbors and you can hear the constant barking from the road. We hope the town board requires conditions that will alleviate potential noise impacts from the operation at the neighboring property. And I'd like to add, when they showed the map of where the kennels are gonna be. That's directly next to my back lot where our door is. So 25 dogs is gonna be extremely loud. I'll have to keep my door closed all summer, and that's gonna make my warehouse probably over 100 degrees.
So when you have that door open, does any noise escape your warehouse?
No, just me talking to my employees.
So you don't make any noise when doing your work?
We use a saw once in a while.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we sell filters. We're a warehouse full of parts, so no, we don't make much noise.
And okay, so it's, because it looks like it's actually closer to Victor Furniture than it is to Oil Filter Service. Am I correct? Wasn't it?
I've really never been on that side of the building,
Yeah,
so
so-
I can't say who's closer.
I'm just looking at the imagery right now, and their driveway comes up the east side of your property. And it looked like they were putting the fenced in area immediately behind their building, which would put it again towards the eastern side. It does look like there is wooded area at the southern end. Becky, are you able to pull up, just Google Maps would be fine? Because one of the things I want to understand is where these bay doors that you're keeping open. You could zoom in. Okay. Well, again. Right. Sure, but I mean, just case in point, there's never going to be 25 to 100 dogs out there.
Would we be able to use the handheld mic?
Yeah. Could you do me a favor and walk back to the podium so that you picked up? Right, I understand that. So that number was in the entire facility. They're not all going to be outdoor at once. So just
Okay.
want to be clear on that point.
Have you heard 5 dogs bark? It's pretty loud.
I own
That's all I have to
dogs.
say.
I've
Thank
owned
you.
dogs all my life. Okay, thank you. Coming up.
Good afternoon, Planning Board. My name is Tom Borshoff. I'm at 71 Saginaw, which is immediately adjacent to 65 Saginaw. I've submitted a 2 or 3 page letter, and I
Got
will
it.
not bore you by reading through it. I only highlight
Which building, which facility is yours? I don't see the street.
71.
No, what's the business?
Oh, there is no business. I use it for storage of furniture for
Okay.
rental properties that I have.
And is there someone there at the building on a regular basis?
Yeah,
like on a
frequently,
daily?
yes. And my another individual has submitted a letter. She is a dog groomer. She indicates she's at the business all the time, also helping me inside the building. I have many people coming in and out of the building.
So this is the same building that the previous gentleman is. in?
Yes, it's
Okay.
built, but closer. It's immediately adjacent
Gotcha.
to the property.
Okay,
I am supportive of the new neighbors venture. I'm only looking that careful consideration be given.
sure.
And that it's thought through very carefully, because I view it as a diverse neighborhood in an industrial area. But I think ahead of the time is the time to think through what the
Absolutely.
issues and problems may be, so that I'm not complaining to the town on a irritating basis after and say, how do we fix this after
Right.
the fact? So I think working together and thinking through these things will be better for everybody. With that having been said, I'll highlight a couple of my concerns. If that map is up again, Google Maps, at the back of the building is the property's only green space. It's an area of lawn, and it's got picnic tables, and it's got a swing set that kids play at when people come and help me work and bring their kids, they play at that. That is, you want me to point to it?
I assume it's the 2 white things I'm seeing to the north side of 71. Yep, that's what I was talking about. Yep. Okay. Could you again do me a favor and speak at the microphone? So for the minutes, thank you.
So that is immediately adjacent to where the proposed outdoor play area is going to be. And it's fairly close. And so that parking will come directly over to the only green area and relaxation area and rest area that exists for this property, where tables and swings are and people go out to relax. I would look for some presentation to be provided as to what the sound barriers will be.
Is there a fence between the two properties today?
No, there's not. It's a direct visual line over there. Now, to educate myself before I came, because I wanted to presume everything was fine, but I said it's my burden to educate myself because I know nothing. If we were talking of housing and number of units and density, I could participate in an intelligent conversation. However, on dogs, I have no foundation. So I said it's my obligation to try to educate myself. So I went to Green Valley, which is at 810 Calkins Road, a new operation that was approved about 3 years ago. I was very impressed with the operation. They have about 41,000 square feet of outdoor space divided into 4 distinct areas of 10,000 square feet each. They limit the number of dogs from 8 to 7 in 10,000 square feet. So I looked at the proposed application, which said 80 to 100 dogs in the outside area. I don't know what it will end up being, but this is the time I'm kind of looking for assurances to make sure what the number is going to be. So I say if Green Valley is got 8 to 14 dogs in 10,000 square feet, and that's what they put on their website, and they talk about the importance of that. How many dogs are going to go into 25% of that space, or 2,250 square feet, to be an appropriate number? So the statistics on Green Valley would be at their highest density population of 14 dogs. It would be 700 square feet per dog, which means in 2,250 square feet, we'd have 3.5 dogs. So I'm only using that as a standard of comparison that I saw. In visiting the Green Valley site, I saw 14 cars in line to pick up dogs when I was there. And I saw barking when dogs were coming out of the building. So I'm thinking it's ordinary and usual to hear barking when dogs are coming out of the building. And they dealt with that traffic by having a nice circular driveway. Their building sits way back, and I observed no residential neighborhoods. They sit on 5 acres of land. My second concern is right now.
Just so you know, they are immediately adjacent to the residential neighborhood.
I went over a second time today and I saw through the trees some residences, and I did see in their application, which I read, there were letters from neighbors with concerns about parking. My second concern is that grading be considered, because currently water runoff, my property is lower elevation wise than 65 Saginaw. Water runoff comes into my property. And it comes directly down to where the swing sets and the picnic tables in the grass area is. And so I'm concerned with if there is feces and urination and there's rain, will that water runoff that's polluted come over into my property where children play? So I'd look for some analysis of the health factors to be considered in that regard. Going back to sound, the current 65 Saginaw has overhead garage doors at the rear of the property, going down to where the green area of my property is. And I would hope that there'd be some restrictions that don't allow those doors to be open, so that the building is a megaphone projecting that sound out. With that all having been said, I'm sure that appropriate conditions and controls can be put in place for the benefit of a new neighbor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
73 Saginaw, I believe, is sending a letter. He asked me to read it, but I'm assuming I don't need to read it if you folks have it.
Becky, do we have a letter from 73 Saginaw? Okay,
It was in, I read it.
Ed White.
I
is
just
the
don't
gen-
remember what address.
Ed White.
Yeah,
no,
I just remember him saying that he had somebody that potentially would read it for him, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
so,
was me. And I'm assuming I don't need to tie your time up.
no, you don't need to tie it.
And Empire Kitchens, which property runs behind 65 Saginaw, and they have a picnic table and a barbecue area out behind their property. He asked me to read his letter, but you have that on file also.
We have that on file
Okay,
also.
thank you
Yep.
very much.
All right, anyone else? I'll come back to you in a second. Anyone else? Okay, did you want to say something?
Do you want any responses or comments by us or?
Other than, sure, you can make them now. And like I said, basically what will happen is over the next, couple weeks, what we'll be doing is that we'll be going through and identifying some of the issues. We'll be talking about some of what we might put on in terms of restrictions. So typically when concerns are raised and mitigation is offered, so let's use your soundproofing, for example, that typically gets put on as a condition of the approval. And that way, if you don't put it in, or if a new owner comes in and buys it, so let's say you guys are the bestest owners in the world and you're going to really make sure that this is not influence your neighbors. The problem is the approval lasts. So you turn around and sell it to someone who doesn't care and they, decide, oh, we're going to remove the soundproofing and we're going to open the stuff up. That by having it be a condition of the approval, it allows us to say, no, you need to put that back or you lose your certificate of occupancy or certificate of compliance in order to operate the facility. So, so like I said, that we've got some work to do in terms of putting that together in the mitigation, but I'm sure the folks nearby would love to hear what you have to say in terms of how you would mitigate some of those issues raised.
The only, I want to make two, actually 3 points. One, we'll reach out to the franchisor and get some more data on similar facilities. And clearly I hear your anxiety about noise. Don't totally share the anxiety, but we hear what's being said. Second, the outdoor play area is fenced in and there's tarps on the fences, so the dog frankly can't see out, but also it will serve to tend to sound mitigation. Third point is I used to be CEO of Clark Patterson Lee here in Rochester. Very familiar with the secret process. I understand what you're saying about what has to go through. So appreciate your time.
One of the questions I do have, it's something that I was thinking of before they even brought it up, had to do with the runoff. Is there, for this turf, is there going to be a drain so like that you can hose down? It will drain towards the middle?
The area will perk down into the soil. We're going to strip off 8 inches of the existing soil behind the building. Backfill it with crusher run and or crushed limestone. The turf, the artificial turf is permeable, so it'll be washed off daily, perked down, and just it's not a contaminant, but the natural drainage of the area. And I can't show on the.
That's fine.
By the loading docks is not there. There is a low area and there's a storm drain there wherever that goes. This area will not be surface runoff into the storm drain system.
Yeah, so those are going to be some of the stuff as we exchange emails. We're going to want to see details on that as to how that's addressed, because that's obviously, something that it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that if there is, so urine runs downhill, right? So in all projects, one of the things we look at is not only to make sure they're not increasing drainage, but typically when something new comes in, we look to say, hey, is there anything we can do to reduce the current runoff that's occurring? Because a lot of times older properties do have runoff going into neighboring properties, which, sometimes again, it's, I'll call it grandfathered in for lack of a better term, in other words, but typically as new stuff comes in, we try to see if there are ways to improve that. So, and certainly if there's a potential for, you know, and I'll go back to something, someone said something about 5 dogs, right? We had 3 dogs. We never had a neighbor complain about them barking. Why? Because we stayed on top of them, right? I've had a neighbor who had 1 dog and that dog was constantly barking. Sometimes it's the dog, it's almost always the owner when you really get down to it. So a lot of this just comes into, you know, are you guys taking care of it? Are you doing the stuff? And as I said, the thing we've got to always remember, both here at the planning board and the zoning board, is these approvals outlast the current owner. So that's why typically we put conditions on stuff like that, that have these significant potentials for adverse impact, because even though you might be very responsible business owners and address all those stuff, we have to deal with the case of, well, you guys decide to retire or move out of state. Someone else comes in and says, oh, doggy daycare, I can do that. They haven't a clue how to do it. They don't understand dog anxiety. They don't, you know, so we get it.
He's not moving.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I will say, being a franchise, is any potential seller, people that we sell to must be approved by the franchise.
Oh, that's right. But my point is, if this has a special use permit for it's not specific to that doggy franchise.
Oh.
So somebody else could come in and say, well, I can operate, I don't need a franchise. I'm just going to operate doggy daycare. That's some of the stuff, which again goes back to why we typically put these restrictions on, because again, you guys are coming in, you've got a franchise behind you, you've got, you know, clearly are passionate about this, are going to work on it, make sure it's not impacting what happens 20, 30 years from now even, right? So that's, like I said, don't, if you see restrictions on it, don't take it as an insult on your ability to run it. We also have to look at who's coming after you. So, okay. Any further comments? Otherwise, we will leave this public hearing open to the next meeting. And like I said, we'll be exchanging a bunch of emails, because I'm going to want some additional information as to, you know, to address a number of the concerns raised, as well as the ones that were already raised internally. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I will close this session of the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-32, but keep the overall public hearing open. Next up, we have a public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-033, Napoli Mart LLC, 201 Scottsville West Henrietta Road, to operate a grocery store. Do we have a representative? Come on up, introduce yourself and your relationship to the project, and then tell us a little bit about the project.
I'm Chandra Mogar. My name is. Actually, I'm opening the our grocery store and 201 Scottsville Road, West Henrietta Road. So actually, we're running our store in 5152 East River Road. Before that, store was Henrietta Grocery. So we buy that store. So in the meantime, we run in the around 6 months from January, we run into 2023. Now what happened? So the landlord doesn't give the leasing. So we need to move our store, so that we're moving in that area, you know, the 201 Scottsville Road.
So the current location, is that the one there's at the 7-Eleven?
Now we are in the 7-Eleven. So
Right.
from 7-Eleven, we're gonna move to the
Got that.
201 Scottsville Road.
And what is currently in the locate? This is next to Miller's Drug is where you're going?
I'm sorry.
This is next to Miller's Drug Store?
Oh, yes, Miller Pharmacy. Yeah.
Miller Pharmacy? Yeah. And
had
so
the-
what's in that location currently? Anything?
Other one, there's one, I think the church is, I think, and one space is the open, there are 2 spaces open, and in the top floor, there's I had apartment.
Gotcha. Okay. Does anybody board members have questions?
What is it zoned here?
This one, correct me if I'm wrong, Becky, it's commercial B2. It may even just be,
It's a planned unit development.
I'm gonna say it may be planned unit development, which does allow a certain amount of commercial enterprises. In fact, it was specifically, one of the ones they were specifically looking for were grocery stores.
Right, and there isn't any grocery stores over in that area, so.
The closest again was his current
Same,
location
but
at
Right.
close
the
Yes.
northeast corner. Yeah.
Yep. And, you know, I imagine Miller's Pharmacy fills in a certain portion of that, but
Right.
the actual grocery store would be preferable.
It's interesting because I know that this community was set up to have all of those things and it never had it. So it's nice to see that it's being finally utilized the way they set the Riverton community up. I think it's a great addition.
Did you get the comments from the town in response to your application?
No.
No? Let me just read you just one of them from our building department.
Okay.
This is a mixed-use building, part of which is residential. That's the apartment. The applicant will need a design professional to evaluate the building for possible additional building and fire code requirements prior to the start of renovations or occupying the space. So you're going to need to get in touch with our building department before you sink any money into it so that you understand exactly what you need to do in order to get a certificate.
I got letter. that-
You got that one?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
I got
good.
that.
I just want to make sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
I got it.
you're welcome.
Yeah, and I would think that any approval, we ought to make contingent on that
Absolutely.
being satisfied. Yeah,
That's why.
especially with the residential. Yeah. Other questions, comments?
No.
Is there anybody from the audience who wishes to comment on this application? Okay. Then hearing no further comments, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-033 Nepali Mart LLC. Does anybody wish to put forward a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I wish to put forth a motion to accept special permit application number 2023-033 Nepali Mart LLC, 2001 Scottsville, West Henrietta Road, to operate a grocery store.
Second,
Do we want to add the conditions that it be conditioned upon the applicant bringing in a design professional to evaluate the building for possible addition building and fire code requirements prior to the start of renovations, and that those additional requirements are met prior
can we just say,
as amended? Or do you want to
to
just say,
satisfy,
we could also say it that way, to satisfy,
Our fire marshal's,
the comments from,
since it was in writing.
it's the director of building and fire prevention. Yeah. So why don't we do that? I make a motion that we amend the granting of the special use permit to make it a requirement that meets the additional requirements as specified in the August 7th, 2023 letter from the Director of Building and Fire Prevention.
second,
Okay, we have to do a quick vote
Vote on the amendment.
to amend it.
okay,
So please call the roll on amending the approval.
Councilmember Safranik,
aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So now we are voting on the
Special permit.
approval of special use permit as just amended. Any further comments before we call the roll? Again, I think this perfectly aligns with the original purposes of this particular area within the planned unit development that is Riverton. So I think we're all kind of in agreement on that.
Yep.
Okay, hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. So like I said, please work with the building department get that stuff ironed out before you start doing any work.
Okay,
And look forward to you opening up in the new location.
thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I will also say, if you want to do anything from a ribbon cutting or anything like that, send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org and I can put you in touch with the Chamber of Commerce. They have the ribbons, the giant scissors, cameras, whole 9 yards. Okay? Thank you. Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-024, West Sunset Development LLC, West Henrietta Road, to construct a senior housing development with 2 26-unit apartment buildings and 4 4-unit ranch-style apartment buildings with 4 units designed to accommodate the hearing impaired. Please introduce yourself and your relationship to the project.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor. My name is John Sharaba with Land Tech, representing the project this evening. With me is also is one of the owners, Mr. Lou Bavone, can answer any questions that I cannot. The board may be familiar with this property. It's a 12.5 acre site located on the east side of West Henrietta Road, just south of Martin Road. 2 years ago, this was approved for a small subdivision in that area. The owners have felt that there's a better market for this property and are proposing a senior project. This property has access to public water, gas, electric, and sanitary sewer. It is encumbered with an existing stormwater management pond and a portion of a New York State wetland along its east property line. What we're proposing, as it says in the public notice, are 68 units. 26 of those are on 2 individual 3-story buildings. I have a rendering of that. Those buildings will have 12, each building has 12 garage units in it. They'll have elevators and everything to meet the town code for sprinkler and fire protection. We are proposing 4 other ranch style units. So those are single story ranch units with 2-car garage. And these are all slated for the adult community. The plan is conceptual in nature, so we're working towards full design plans, but this is the first step in the process. We're fully aware that we're going to have to go to the planning board and possibly the zoning board for relief of some of the factors related to it. Based on some comments that I received from staff and some elements of the concept plan, I can kind of go over what our biggest hurdles are with this application and what we're asking for relief from this board. The first is density. If we take the 12.5 acres and we take out the wetlands itself and the buffer, that reduces the buildable area down to about 10.4 acres, which when you do the math comes out to 62.4 units allowed. As I mentioned before, we're looking at 68 units, so we're 6 over what code requires. But in the process of doing this planning, the owners have identified a need in the senior community. I think the supervisor is well aware of it, that the hearing and visually impaired senior community have no options for housing.
Limited
options, excuse me. So we're proposing to have 2 of these buildings, which would be 8 units, to be wired and put the applications in required to service that part of the community. I can't go into detail of what those are. I'm not an expert in that, but that's our game plan. So we hope that will encourage the board to vote for the extra units to make this project successful. The other elements that are apparent on the plan are the separation and setbacks and transition areas from the adjacent areas. So this isn't a rural residential area, and the code requires 100-foot buffer. We were able to accomplish that on our north and south property line next to the adjacent homes, where we have at least 102 feet to the building. But when you further dive into the code, it actually says not just the buildings, but any pavement. So, the pavement that we have, the closest pavement is 35 feet from the property line. That's along our south line. And we do also have some separation issues from our northern neighbor, which is a kind of a flag lot configuration, where our 26 unit building is only 58 feet plus or minus from the property line. I think those issues hopefully can be mitigated. I think that traffic circulation is important around these buildings and the site, and also emergency vehicles, because right now they can circle 4 sides of the building in case of any kind of emergency. Those are there's some minor separation issues between the building. There's 2 units located near the pond. Those at this point are 31 feet apart and they need to be 40 feet. I think those can be accomplished as the plans develop through the planning board. And another one that I think that Chris Martin and I spoke briefly about is the height of the building. It is a 3-story building. So at the peak, it is 48.6 feet high. But at the mean elevation between the peak and the eave, it's at 39 feet, 10 inches. And I think that's what's regulated, and I could be wrong.
Thought it was 35 foot. Is that,
That
Chris, do you know?
I think you're correct as far as the code, but that's what that building actually measures to.
Right, well,
It's Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning, and it is 35 feet in our rural residential district.
so the point is, if you're looking to go to 39, you would have to file an additional special use permit to get the additional height.
Okay.
Or you'd have to figure out how to get your building height down to 35. Again, not the peak, it's that midway point
Yeah.
between essentially the top story and the peak.
And I think we have the scope of this project could warrant that additional special permit, and we have the time for that. I think, if the board feels that this is a suitable use for the property and it's something we can move forward on, that we would probably come and revisit you for that extra
Okay.
height.
The, yeah, in terms of the setbacks, the biggest issue I see, there's some of the, like I said, there with the pavement, there are some issues in that regards. The biggest issue is that flag lot. I don't know if there's any ability to essentially acquire any of that land around there, or to get that resident to sign off that they do not feel a need for the transition buffer. But yeah, that's something I do think we need to. I think that your plan's gonna, even though this is still just the conceptual plan, I think it's gonna need a little bit of updating before I'm ready to approve it. The thing I will note is what, if because of that, you're now down to 62.4, you're looking at wanting 6 extra units, which would say to me that you would need 12 wired for the, if we're gonna keep the same ratio of additional units, you would need 12 to be wired for the deaf and hard of hearing in order to meet that requirement.
Yeah, and
And
we don't
then-
have a problem wiring. We just hope that market's there. So,
Right.
yeah.
So one of the things, so again, I can put you in touch with the folks who are there. And one of the things that we're going to want to get an understanding of is how would we address that? If once they're built, I won't say reserved, but that priority is given to the deaf and hard of hearing. And obviously you've got to have something in there that, right, if all your units are full and I've only got those spaces left and there is nobody from the deaf and hard of hearing community coming and saying, I need housing, then obviously, yeah, we're not saying that has to sit empty forever.
Yeah.
But we'd want to just, if you could just write something up a little that explains, because that was one of the concerns raised by board members at our workshop, is how will that be handled? Because we don't want to just give the extra units and then have them filled with, anybody, if there is a need for the deaf and hard of hearing community, as was expressed to me. Again, there were multiple people who came up to me and expressed that concern at the 35th anniversary of Interpretech, who provides interpreting service for that community. So there was a number of residents in Henrietta who are in the deaf and hard of hearing community and expressed that they, as they're getting close to retirement, their options are limited as to senior living that it is wired with strobes and other support. And the other thing they were looking at is, could that, which was why I like the units at the pond, is could those, that there can be sort of a community feel to it for the 8 residents or families that live in those homes, that they can also be supportive of each other.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know that we talked briefly about this plan to service that community. And I probably lean back on you a little bit to help get me in contact with people. And I think we can come up with if we progress down that line in the future, a rental protocol where if we have 2 or 4 agencies that have access to people that are looking for these, that we could make sure we reach out to them when that, so the first of every month and establish a list or something like that.
Yeah, so I will, I'll get you in touch this coming week. Probably, I'm going to reach out to the president of NTID and see if he knows of any community organizations and if there's anybody listening, or if our interpreters happen to know of someone who we could reach out to help address that. I'd appreciate it. You can let me know. So we'll get you in touch with someone that you can start to talk to, because again, I do know that there is a significant community in town.
Yep.
And so that doesn't mean I know how to get directly in touch with them, other than, like I said, I know who I can talk to get in touch with them. So, okay. Other questions from the board? I mean, overall, again, if there's one thing we've learned, and I will let you know, we have a senior housing fair coming up at our senior center. If you haven't reached out to the senior center, do so. If you need to be put in touch, it's on our website, or you can send me an email and I'll reply with our directors copied in. But it's intended not just for current operators of senior living facilities, but also for those that are coming down the road. And it's an education for a lot of our seniors, because some of them are looking right now to take advantage of the real estate market as it is, to potentially downsize, or looking to see what's coming down the road to decide whether they want to wait till those new facilities come in. So it might be a good opportunity also for you to meet a lot of seniors. We've had pretty strong response, both from the seniors as well as from the senior housing facility. So that might be a good place for you guys to attend. It's the third week in September. I don't remember the exact date. If one of my staff members is listening and knows that date, feel free to share it. But like I said, it might be a good place for you to get some feel for that. And then, as I said, either through NTID, through our interpreters, through somebody listening, we'll get you some good contact into the deaf and hard of hearing community, as far as that goes.
We appreciate that.
Yep.
And just another more procedural question for you, Mr. Supervisor, about, that one concern we both have over the flag lot and that separation. A lot of times we accomplish that with additional landscaping and fencing. Maybe he's here tonight and wants to reach out and talk to, but I don't know.
Yeah. So
how far do you want me to go, I guess, with that?
So, yeah, I mean, if you want to try to reach out to that individual, we can try to reach out to that individual. If they reach out, if that individual's listening and wants to, you're here. All right. So I'll let him talk and see what he has to say.
Steve, I do have the date. It's Friday, September 22nd, 9 to 12.
Thank you. And so again, you'll want to reach out to Shelley Garino, the director of our senior center, to get on this, essentially get a table at that event. All right. Any other questions from town board before we bring up the neighbor? All right. If you want to just sit over here in case you have to answer a question, I appreciate it. Come on up.
Good evening, town board, and hi, John. Got to have the face behind the name. Al DiMaria, who I purchased the house from, has mentioned your name in the past. My name is Mike Berardi. Berardi Property Holdings LLC owns the 6500 house. I just briefly own a property at 56 Derrick Drive, which is around the corner. Drove up from Allegheny County, which was where my main residence is, for about a year. Saw that property a few times, and all of a sudden was up for sale. So contacted them and was able to buy it in March of 2020. I was aware that it was subdivided, was a more property subdivision. And at that time, my understanding was it was residential property. And I was aware that houses might be built in those, I think it was 5 subdivisions. Based on the property lines in the distance. And if a house is being built in the lot in front of me, I figured it'd probably be somewhere in the middle of the lot and it wouldn't be too far and it wouldn't be too much of an encroachment on the property for privacy, et cetera. And as I received the June letter, things have changed from the June letter to the August letter, and then also now seeing the height and the size and the close proximity to the front door. I just object to the idea of that building project being in there in front of that. So I have not moved up here fully yet. My wife's a school teacher in Scioto, New York. She's been there for 27 years. She'd like to finish her time out there. So if it was up to me, would have moved up last year full time, but I want to be more understanding. And so we're taking our time. We're up weekends. My son lives there full time. Well, we could be there. She interviewed at a school district locally and just didn't quite work out. But we're going to be up here full time in Henrietta and really like the property and not opposed to the idea of apartments and the senior and everything that's being said sounds good, but I mean, I'm flagged in and you see the property lines and with the parking lot being that close and I have objections to the project.
So like I said, that's the purpose of the buffers is to provide that space. And typically what we would require them to do is, and you can see some of it on here, that they would have to add. Typically it's trees or arborvitae or some type of vegetative screening to help reduce that. So, but from the sounds of it, you'd have no interest in seeing that buffer reduced is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. My other question is I believe I have like a private easement, 25 feet to the road. How does this project affect that at all?
I'm not sure which.
Can we pull that map up? I can probably show you.
I think it's a water service easement.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not encumbering.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that if it's a water easement, then yeah, no, would not, they would have to keep that open.
Sure. Okay. And then you had mentioned 100 feet. What was, can you repeat that back? So I can...
For multifamily, and this is off the top of my head, and Chris Martin can chime in with the correct numbers if I get them wrong, but it's typically 100 feet between a multifamily and a single family residence. So that's a new multifamily development coming in next to an existing residential. The planning board does have the ability to reduce that to 50 feet if they deem appropriate. I would hope they would take your concerns into account when they do that. Look into that. One of the things we would take a look at too, and we've done this with another one, is so like if there's a road coming down towards and those headlights would be pointing at your house. One of the things we've done at another recent apartment is we required them to have basically a fence, a solid fence there of sufficient height so headlights don't get through, because you can put vegetative screening in, depending on the time of year, the headlights still get through. So typically shy of the vegetative screening, there would be fencing that would block the light. So we typically like to look into, take into account stuff like that, but it's glad to hear you're here. I'm sure that the developers would have preferred to have been able to reduce that buffer, but again, that's, to be honest, since you're the one being impacted, that's your call. And it sounds like you're not interested in having that reduced. So what you're going to need to take that into into account.
If I may interrupt for a minute, Mr. Supervisor, it's Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning. You are correct with the 100-foot buffer. between multifamily and single family. But the side setback from the property line to any paved area or building has to be 60 feet.
60, not 50. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I recognize Mr. Berardi's comments, and I'm glad he's here. I will hopefully exchange numbers with him and look at options. And as we know, this plan is conceptual. I know that we talked briefly about even reducing parking. We have 12 garages within those buildings, so maybe a combination of reducing a pavement in that area that affects him, additional landscaping, fencing, and but I'll take the opportunity to work with Mr. Berardi and see if we can come up with some amicable solution.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Any other comments? Did you have anything else, or you? all
No,
set?
thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then we're gonna keep the public hearing open. We'll close this session of the public hearing. But keep the public hearing open for special use permit application number 2023-024 West Sunset Development LLC. And finally, we have special use permit application number 2022-051 East Henrietta Apartments by AR Building Company, 2160 and 2132 East Henrietta Road, to construct 2 4-story apartment buildings for a total of 101 units. So anybody here from that project? Are they online?
I do have a number of folks online for this project.
Hi, everybody. This is Emily Mitchell with AR Building Company. I'm here with our engineer, Brad Simmons with CEC.
Sorry, I was having problems with the mute button here.
No problem. So I think you've seen the list of, we did extensive seeker on this one. There were, I think, a total of 19 potential adverse impacts raised. And you guys have gone through each and every one of them and offered mitigation, including purchasing the property next door in order to get the unit count down, modifying your plans so as to get the buildings away from existing houses, offering to put in the fencing. In fact, yours was the project I was just referring to, with the fencing to reduce lights from impacting the neighbors. I won't go through the full list of 19, but I know it's been a long slog, at least for relative to Henrietta projects. For Brighton, this would be a snap of a finger. But for Henrietta, this has been a long process. I don't have a whole lot else to say other than, like I said, it seems to me you've addressed all the concerns. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say before we open it up to the floor.
No,
Because I think this is their 4th time here, maybe.
at least, yeah.
Yeah. So is there anybody in the audience, either in person or online, who wishes to add any comments? Then hearing and seeing none, I am going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-051 East Henrietta Apartments by AR Building Company.
Mr. Supervisor, I would like to submit resolution number 17-285/2023 to issue a seeker determination and a negative declaration for a proposed multifamily development by AR Building Company at or about 2160 and 2132 East Henrietta Road.
Second. Any further discussions? Again, you'll notice, well, I guess this one's a seeker. It's the next one that has most of the conditions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-286, 2023 to approve special use permit number 2022-051 for a proposed multifamily development by AR Building Company at or about 2160 and 2132 East Henrietta Road.
Second.
So again, there is a lengthy list of conditions. 7 all, although one of them has parts A through H. And these again address some of the mitigations offered are essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, baked right into the site plan. So obviously moving the building so that they not overlooking the neighbors' yards, that's part of the site plan. But some of these things, like I said, became conditions of the application, because again, going forward, it's like a future owner, if you guys ever sell and someone else is managing this, a future owner might say, oh, I don't need that fence to block the lights. They're certainly not going to say, oh, I'm going to move the building back over to its original location. So those ones typically aren't baked in as conditions, but the other stuff that could potentially change, they get baked in as conditions so that the town has leverage to make sure that those mitigations offered to lessen the impact on the surrounding properties stay in place. And so if we, hear of issues that the stormwater pond isn't being maintained properly and that a bunch of stormwater is going to the neighboring properties, or, again, that fence is not maintained and headlights are shining in people's back windows, those are things that we will come to you or whoever is currently operating the apartment to have that remedied. So.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. Any further comment? Anything from the public, either in person or online? And hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. Again, if you want to coordinate any kind of ribbon cutting or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I can put you in touch with our Henrietta Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate all the work you put into working with us.
And again, thank you for being willing to work with us to minimize the impact on the neighbors. I know the neighbors would generally prefer the property stay empty. But the goal here is to follow the law and minimize the impact on the surrounding properties. And we appreciate your cooperation and willingness to mitigate those issues.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, everyone, for your help.
Thank you. Finally, we have a public hearing for a proposed local law to amend the town code to revise provisions relating to environmental quality review. I don't know if anybody has any feedback. Looks like we just lost the last of our in-person attendees.
Seeker will do that.
Yeah. So basically, for those curious, what we're doing is when this law was originally put in place, it included some stuff from what was then current with regards to seeker. Seeker law has changed. So rather than codify the current seeker into our town code, the town code will now refer to the New York State seeker laws, so that as seeker changes, we don't have to update our code. However, we did not have the public notice for this one out in time. So we will not be voting on it tonight. So I will be holding this public hearing open until the next meeting, and we'll vote on it then. Is there anybody who has any input on it? As exciting as procedural town code is? Guess not. So I'm going to close this session of the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the town code relating to seeker. But we will hold the public hearing open. Can I get my fourth resolution?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 17-287, 2023 to approve and or ratify the following agreements.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-288, 2023 to authorize bills payable and any associated contracts or agreements for August 25th, 2023 through today, August 30th, 2023.
Second.
So I'll note the bills payable included a number of pay apps for the court construction, as well as a number of others that come due at this time, which is why it's so high.
It's nice approving bills you don't have to personally pay.
That's right. Any discussion, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-289/2023 to purchase golf course equipment from Joseph C. Domino Incorporated for half cash and half debt reduction.
Second. So basically what that means is the Joseph C. Domino Company owes the town roughly $70,000 in unpaid use fees under the operating agreement for Riverton Golf Course. So this town board had an issue essentially paying for equipment and not having that reduced. So I spoke to Mr. Domino and we came to an agreement that we're going to apply half of that towards the balance, half of that towards in cash or check. And then hopefully he will continue to pay down what he owes the town. Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-290, 2023 to reauthorize an intermunicipal agreement for the transfer of land to create a new Monroe County Park.
Second.
So we'd actually previously approved the IMA, but it changed form. The terms are all the same, but it changed enough that we felt it was appropriate. Normally, if it's only what I'll call cosmetic changes or minor changes, we don't require the reapproval, but the town attorney and I felt this was significant enough that it made sense to bring it back. So, any questions? One thing I will note is one of the things that was pulled out of here because apparently we'd had it in a previous through a larger thing done through the Council of Governments a few years ago. There was a cooperative agreement terms in the IMA that we put together and sent to the county. They didn't want to duplicate that. So this IMA essentially references the one that was put in place in 2021 and incorporates it. Because one of that cooperative is key to the operation of this park. Because again, we have adjacent lands. We're going to be there plowing our stuff anyway. So it makes no sense to have the county folks come in and plow the road. It makes much more sense for us to plow the road for the county. So we wanted to make sure that agreement was in place, but I'd forgotten that when County Executive Bello reinstituted the Council of Governments, they put in place these mutual aid agreements. And at the time we didn't have a county parks, which is probably why I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But that was in place with all the towns, including us. So we're under that agreement now, or we'll be under that agreement once this park transfer occurs. Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 17-291, 2023 to authorize the purchase of a video security system with equipment and installation from Averis Solutions.
Seconded.
So I will note there were two alternatives offered. We chose not to go with them at this time. Those alternatives were to upgrade the library. One was for the library, one was for the rec center, to bring them onto the same system. In talking about it with our director of IT, it made more sense to us that we hold off on doing that. Let's try the new systems. If it's so much better than the other systems in place, we'll actually bring the directors from each of those facilities. They can try out the new system, and if they think it's worth it, we'll upgrade at that time. And the other thing I will note, we did not include the court in here because if it isn't a requirement already, we can easily see it becoming a requirement in the future, that the court video surveillance system having to be on its own isolated system, not part of the rest. So that is will be bid out as part of the construction project, but we did not include it in here. This is just for town hall and all of the DPW buildings. So the main DPW building, the sewer garage, the grounds garage, as well as the workshop. So town hall was, yeah. So any other questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-292, 2023 to approve the conveyance of lands to the town of Henrietta from the Foxfield subdivision, section 2.
Second.
So this area will be part of a future river walk, assuming the New York State Department of State ever finishes reviewing our LWRP plan. And then there's only one small sliver of land we either need to acquire or acquire an easement for. But otherwise, we've got pretty much the entire length. Well, I take back one section of that. We have the agreement in place. Once again, we're waiting on Albany. It's the land swap transfer with Parcel A and Riverton Golf Course that had to go through parkland alienation. We're now on, I don't know, month 12, 13. Hopefully that'll wrap up soon. But once that's done, we'd be able to do a river walk from the former Kodak facility, which now the Riverwood Tech Campus, all the way down to the Rush town line. And Rush is working on taking it all the way down to the Lehigh Valley Black Diamond Trail that actually crosses the river across an old railroad bridge, and then would connect into the Greenway Trail that goes north up to Genesee Valley Park and south all the way down through Letchworth Park. So it'd be a phenomenal Greenway hiking trail system. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, resolution number 17-293/2023 to accept the dedication of the sanitary pump station for Howlett Acres, subdivision section 1.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-294, 2023 to declare an item surplus material from the Henrietta Public Library.
Second.
We had our IT folks, I think it was the library IT folks, check. Unfortunately, this particular computer is dead. So we were seeing if there was an opportunity to potentially donate it. There isn't, so it's going to go to a
Cycling.
recycling facility, yeah. Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 17-295, 2023. Whereas the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, has offered to donate a spare piece of field maintenance equipment to the town of Henrietta, more specifically a Dakota Model 440 turf tender. And whereas the turf tender would help tremendously in the town's efforts to revitalize both the Riverton Municipal Golf Course and the sports fields at Veterans Memorial Park, and would furthermore reduce the time to maintain those fields moving forward. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board accepts the donation of the turf tender and thanks RIT and especially the Facilities Management Services for the generous donation to the town of Henrietta, where it will be put to good use on our golf course and ball fields. Be it further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to complete the necessary paperwork with RIT to finalize the transaction and have town crews pick up the turf tender from the RIT campus once approval is received from RIT's Associate Vice President of Facilities Management Services.
Seconded.
So we were quite surprised. In fact, it was interesting. We were actually looking to buy this at auction. And then it got pulled from auction and we were informed that they were donating it instead. So I don't know if they pulled it from auction specifically to donate it, but very generous. And, you know, it's great to have RIT, be a partner with the town with regards to a number of our efforts. You know, when we were building the sidewalk for East River Road, they actually built the sidewalk connection. They extended a sidewalk from their inner sidewalk system out to where the new sidewalk's going to go. It kind of illustrates the difference between private industry and Albany, because they built it and it was another 3.5 years before Albany finally approved this expenditures of the funds. But like I said, it's great to have them as a partner and we really appreciate the turf tender. I know the Charlie Ramelt, who is managing the work on the golf course, was very excited because he said this will greatly reduce the time it's going to take to do some of the work there. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you very much for your generosity.
Yeah.
Hearing and seeing nothing further, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-296, 2023. Whereas Carol Redmond has donated $75 to the Henrietta Senior Center for a lilac bush, and whereas $75 was received by the Senior Center, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Carol Redmond for her generosity.
Second.
Comments?
I'm sure it's going to be a lovely addition to the landscaping there at the Henrietta Senior Center. Lilacs are just very meaningful to this area and appreciate the donation.
Agreed. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 17-297/2023. Whereas the Friends of Tinker Nature Center, Tinker Nature Park have donated $549 for 2 maple trees to be planted at Tinker Park. And whereas a check in the amount of $549 was received by the Director of Finance. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks the Friends of Tinker Nature Park for their generosity.
So I will note, we lost a number of ash trees along the front of the property along Calkins Road. So it'll be great to start to replace these. I know that they're working on a plan, so it's not going to be monoculture. They're going to intersperse the different genuses of trees. Very appreciative of the Friends of Tinker Nature Park for making the donation. Any other comments?
No, just, as you said, it's great to replace the ones that are going down and to keep adding to how beautiful Tinker Park is.
It's definitely something that the generations to come will be able to enjoy with these continued investments. So it's fantastic.
Agreed. Hearing and seeing nothing further, please call the roll.
I actually believe I missed the second on this one. I think we were so excited to thank them for the donation. We skipped it.
I will second it.
Thank you very much. I will call the roll. Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-298, 2023. Whereas Joanne Palladino DeSano has donated $40 to the Henrietta Public Library in memory of Shirley Turner for the acquisition of adult books. And whereas a check in the amount of $40 was received by the library director, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Joanne Palladino DeSano for her generosity.
Second.
Comments?
It's awesome how many people give to the library and how much giving, even, $40 for a book is going to impact so many other people. It's just a wonderful donation.
And a great way to remember a loved one.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 17-299, 2023. To appoint Sandra Velat and John Dewey's to the Library Board of Trustees.
Seconded.
My apologies if I mispronounced any names.
Comments?
I just want to say that I know the board is very excited to have these two people join. They did have some people want to do it and they interviewed everybody and thought these two would be a really great addition to the board. So we're excited to have them.
Yeah, I know that they were also very excited to have a plethora of applicants. So,
Yes.
Unfortunately, it also means that some deserving people did not get the appointment, but we again thank you for everybody who is willing to step up and volunteer to help the community. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-300, 2023 to reappoint Gary Junge to the Board of Assessment Review.
Second.
I will say this is probably the board that faces the most animosity. It's probably the most difficult to chair.
Yeah.
And we are so fortunate to have somebody like Gary willing
Mhm.
to step forward and do it for another term.
Yeah.
So, very appreciative, again, of all our board members, but especially ones who are willing to step forward and take the chair position.
And
And
he's
again-
always so kind. And I mean, I've sat in some of the review sessions and he's just always been so kind and knowledgeable. And it's just really a tribute to him. He's thrilled to have him back on the board.
Yep. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-301/2023 to authorize the tax certiorari settlement with SNS Realty of Rochester LLC and Bernard Schroeder.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-302, 2023 to authorize placement of delinquent sewer bills on the 2024 combined town and county tax rolls.
Second.
Comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 17-303/2023 to call for a public hearing on a proposed local law to update the town code to remove imprisonment as punishment for town code violations.
Seconded.
So, you probably all, I know all the board members have heard me complain about this before. Our code, I don't know when this was originally put in, but to me, a year in jail is not the equivalent of $1,000 in fines. In talking about this, you couldn't really see any reason that any of the base violations of town codes should result in imprisonment. I did learn that there was one instance in the known time that someone was assigned a few days in jail. But that was also for, I'll call it continued willful violation. We had talked about some means for these repeat offenders, that there is something in jail, and that's why this has been waiting a while. We haven't figured out how to do that. In the meantime, having the jail there just seems unjust and also creates problems for us. So my thought is we remove it now. And if we come up with a good system to deal with the folks who are the repeat offenders, to potentially have jail time for those who, again, willingly and repeatedly violate town code with I'll call a scofflaw attitude, then we'll further modify the code to add that back in. But in the meantime, let's just get it out of there. It just, again, makes no sense that if you forget to file a permit, you can spend a year in jail. That makes no sense. Any further comments, discussion? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 17-304/2023 to approve and adopt the standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have resolution number 17-305/2023 to make appropriate budget transfers and adjustments.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 17-306, 2023 to hire personnel.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Sorry. Do we have any discussion items or comments from the public? Hearing and seeing none, do we have any committee or miscellaneous reports from the board?
Library Board. Tomorrow night at the library, there is a disaster preparedness with the New York State Citizen Preparedness Corps. It's tomorrow night from 7 to 8 in the community library room, and there's still spots available for that. And also, we are again doing Seeing Henrietta Through Your Eyes, looking for you to send in artwork, photography, anything representing Henrietta. If you go online, you can get some additional information on that, but please be aware of that and send artwork in because we'd love to have it displayed on our website for the town.
And I haven't reviewed it yet, but I'm pretty sure that is part of the submission for the newsletter. It'll be information about that will be in the newsletter as well.
Yes, yes, that's what we just want to give a little. Adrian had asked me to do a little head start to it.
Absolutely. Others? So as mentioned, there is a newsletter. Just started working on the next newsletter, so that should be out. Probably go to press the week after Labor Day, and so maybe mid-September it should be hitting newsstands. Newsstands, listen to me. It'll be hitting mailboxes. Hearing and nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing and seeing no objections, meeting adjourned.